What is up, Lion Nation? It's Mike from The Roar. I know we're a little late on this podcast, but you know what they say, better late than never. So we really hope you guys enjoy this special late version of the podcast. But anyway, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for listening. Here's a little bye-week treat for you. So, Demetrius, take it away, buddy.
Are you listening?
Welcome to The Roar, the fan reaction podcast for fans of the Detroit Lions. My name's Demetrius Verges, and with me, as always, my super producer, Mike Ward. We hope you enjoy the podcast. We want to give you the real reaction, the fan reaction after each Lions game. If you like the podcast, we hope you'll go to our Twitter page at CityRoar, give us some nice comments, check us out on our Facebook page, The Roar Podcast, subscribe at YouTube, The Roar, or find us anywhere you get your podcast. Hopefully we'll be out there. If not, just hit us up on our email and we'll make sure you get the link. So in today's podcast, we're here to review Week 3 of the 2019 season. The Lions traveled to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. A beat-up Eagles team, missing key players, top two receivers, Deshaun Jackson, Alshon Jeffries, not playing. And the good guys came away with a 27-24 win. And we'll get right to the particulars. Total yards. It wasn't a pretty game by any means. And I think we need to fasten our seatbelts and get ready because we're going to have a season of these games. And I'd like to be wrong. I'd like to be wrong here, but I think we're going to have a season of these games where it's just not going to look good. Win or lose, or tie, obviously. It's not going to look good. It's going to be a grind. It's going to be a struggle. They're going to, they don't seem to have the capacity to just do it the easy way, the step on the throat, what I have called on past podcasts, trophy room mentality. It doesn't seem like they have it. It doesn't seem like they want it. It doesn't seem like their schemes, offensively or defensively, support it. So I think we're going to have games where as I move into the particulars, I'm going to be talking about statistics like this, which don't feel like win a game type statistics. But they had 287 total yards. Now, Philadelphia had 373. But the thing I'm going to struggle with probably until they fix it is that they had 86 rushing yards on 28 carries. Now, I'm not going to beat up Darrell Bevell on this podcast because I think it's supposed to be about this game, right? And I have to work really hard not to pull things in from last week or 2 weeks ago or even last year, right? Today, the offense was they were creative in some plays, right? There were some things that they did that I liked at times. I don't know that you're going to make it through an NFL season rushing the ball 28 times and only getting 86 yards. Now, the important piece of that is half of it, maybe 30 plus of it came on a trickery, right? On a reverse play to J.D. McKissick. Great play, great call, great timing. But it accounted for a lot of their yards. So, Philly rushed the ball 30 times for 127. Not a ton better, not much better. And plus they were putting the ball on the ground, things like that. But I feel like I like that they rushed the ball 28 times. But if it's a real number, if I read it correctly, I could probably say 27 carries for 45 or 50 yards. And that would be alarming. That's a yards per carry that Kerryon Johnson in particular was very good at last year, that you can't allow to get into the twos, right? Yards per carry has to be higher. Yards per carry's got to be in the upper fours, the fives. Now I say all that and they're 2-0-1, right? They're undefeated, which is just and Mike, I know you wanna get in on that. It's too funny. But at the end of the day, they are undefeated. And I'll steal something from someone else, but I just think it's too great. LeVar Ball never lost. Love it. So the rushing yards concerns me, obviously, as one of the particulars. They have to figure out what it is. I don't know what it is. Is it the scheme? Because you see, and I've talked about dive plays into the middle of the line that don't make sense to me, and there's a degree of, hey, it's setting up play action and all these different thoughts. I don't know how I feel about it. I just feel like they need to be better because that stat's really 27 carries for like 50 yards. That's got to be better. Turnovers. Here's the deal. I've said it. My two things every week are turnovers and penalties. I'm going to talk about them every podcast, and I will guarantee you that they will have a direct impact on whether or not the Lions won the game or lost the game. And today it's simple. The Eagles put the ball on the ground twice. 3 times, actually. They recovered one of their own fumbles, but Sanders fumbled once, and the receiver, I want to say his name is Hollins, but I could have the wrong guy. The receiver made a catch, made a move, fumbled. So the Eagles had 2 turnovers. Now, I'm not going to use this moment to go over my biggest problem with the team right now, and the term is leaving points on the field. Leaving points on the field. I'm going to get into that later because I'm really concerned about their inability to score in the red zone. And I haven't looked at specific numbers. I didn't want to jade myself for the podcast. I wanted to really be my reaction to this game shouldn't have been that close. This is the foot on the neck trophy room mentality. In the first half, you get 2 gift turnovers that give you a short field, that give you momentum, that gives you everything you need to go and put the ball in the end zone and put this game out of reach. So when this game was 20-10, it should have been 28-10. It should have been worse because they got 2 field goals off 2 turnovers that gave you a short field and big momentum. You got to find a way to get the ball in the end zone. But I'm going to talk more about that. Penalties, again, I hate to do it, but it is so important. The Lions committed 9 penalties today. The yardage to the penalties is deceiving. It was 61 yards, but that's not what matters, right? The penalties, and I should maybe just save this for later too, to talk about highs and lows and what really impacts the game. So I'll just give you the statistic: 9 penalties, 61 yards. So the 61 yards is really insignificant. It's how they report penalties. So it's what I want to talk about in this section of the podcast. They commit 9 penalties. I think it was 8 last week. I think it was 9 week 1. That's too many penalties. I don't know where that puts them in the league or in the division or what the correlation is to teams that win and how many penalties they commit per game. I don't know what those numbers are. I know that when I'm watching this team for 3 weeks in a row, the feeling I get as a fan, again, I always say the same thing. I'm not an expert. I've never been a coach. I'm not a broadcaster. I'm not a journalist. I'm a guy who loves watching Lions football. It feels like they're committing too many penalties. And more than that, they're committing too many dumb penalties. Because we've talked about this. There's good penalties and there's bad penalties. And I'll elaborate later. But the 9 penalties for a team that preaches discipline and the coach, he talks a lot about work ethic and guys playing better and harder. And I feel like those focus and concentration penalties are going to be something we talk about on a weekly basis because it's impacting the game. And it impacts me. It impacts us as fans when we see a 3rd down stop and that little bar comes over and it says flag. You know it. I mean, as a fan, you know it. You're like, okay, there we go. There you go. Now, I'm also going to talk about the officials, right? Because I quite honestly, I did not love their performance yesterday at all. There's some things that I'm going to grant as a fan I don't know. So some of them are going to be questions, and some of them are just going to be my response to. I know what my eyes see, right? And there's an old. I'm not going to digress too much, but there's an old Richard Pryor comedy album where he says to his wife, "Are you going to believe me or your lying eyes?" Right? And that's how the refs make me feel sometimes in games. And the whole challenge thing and what's a penalty and what's not is making the game difficult sometimes. I don't know that I will ever be that fan who thinks the game's got to be shorter. I don't buy that. I don't buy it in baseball, and I certainly don't buy it in football. I don't need the game to be shorter. I have no complaints about the length of the game. That's a broadcaster journalist buzzword that one network decided to create and say, oh, games are too long. We got to shorten the length of games. We got to shorten the length of games. I don't buy that. I don't need the games to be shorter. I'm not bothered by timeouts. I'm not bothered by commercials. Commercials pay the bills. I get all that. I would watch a 7-hour game. I don't care. I don't have that attention span. I love watching the Lions, and I don't care how long the game is. I'm going to watch it until it's over, right? I mean, metaphorically over, which could be down 30 with 6 minutes left. I'm checking out. I'll check out, but I don't have some complaint that replay is a problem. I like the idea of getting it right. I don't mind the idea of human error, but if it's costing teams opportunities to compete for championships, like the Saints last year, I'm about getting it right. I don't care how long it takes. So I'm not the guy who's going to come on and complain about too many replays. You know what lengthens the game? Penalties. All those stupid penalties. That's what lengthens the game, not challenges. If you're a coach and you think a challenge will benefit your team, then you challenge it. You challenge the play and make sure it's right. Because if you don't, you're going to get roasted anyway. The talking heads that do that thing for a living, they're going to blast you no matter what. No matter what the score is, no matter what you do, they're going to blast you anyway. So as a fan, speaking as a fan, get it right. Do what you think is best. And I'm fine if you think you're doing something that's going to help your team and you happen to get it wrong. I'm not going to do that. What I will do is say, wait, that doesn't make any sense. What the hell are we doing? Dive plays on 3rd and 3 right into the heart of the defense. Conceptually, it doesn't make sense to me. So I don't get that. I'm never going to say, oh, wait, it looked like that could have been a pass interference. I want to challenge this play. Then challenge the play. And if you get it wrong, get it wrong. But saving your timeouts that you end up not using when you could have kept time on the clock that maybe would have helped you, maybe not, those things I don't get. So I'll always ask the question, why? What the hell were we thinking? I'll ask those questions. But I'm never gonna bitch about, oh no, the game's too long, because if you have the opportunity to get it right. And the reality is just that technology has afforded us the ability to get it right more often than not. We don't have to live with human error. And if you have an opportunity to get it right, get it right. I don't care about the time. I don't care about the length of the game. None of that matters. Get it right. But I question whether or not the refs got it right. I question a couple of things that I just don't get. I don't get. So we'll get into all that. So at the end of the day, 27-24 win, statistically ugly, but I think that's going to be a theme. I think we're going to talk about that every week. No turnovers, and still penalties are a problem. No, bad penalties are a problem. I want to make it clear, I don't have a problem with the number. Because I believe there are things called good penalties. Now, I'll talk about that more later. So it's not the 9, and it's certainly not the 61. It's that 3 or 4 of those 9 were devastating. Like, the result of the penalty was devastating, or the stupidity of the penalty makes no sense, and it's just dumb. That's my thought on penalties. But I think penalties and turnovers are the 2 key things that impact a game, because most games are close. There's a 3-point game. I think most games are within 6-7 points. So when you think about things like settling for a field goal instead of getting in the end zone, when you think about penalties that extend drives defensively, or holding or false start penalties that kill drives offensively, these things are critical. Turnovers are points you don't get, and opportunities for points they do get. Possessions are critical. So I'm always going to focus on those things because I truly believe those are the things that, as a fan, when I'm watching a game, those are the things that make me think, okay, that's impactful to whether or not we win or lose this game. So those are the particulars. And now I want to move on to the funny segment that we all love, Mike's favorite, blah, blah, blah. And so for me, blah, blah, blah is important. It's important to the podcast. It's important because I think, one, I don't ever want to get too serious. And I think that there will be games because of the way the game works out. Probably a loss, probably a bad loss or an inexplicable loss that I will need this point in the podcast to break it up, right? And there'll be games where right now, we're 2-0-1, and I genuinely don't feel the kind of heat that I imagine there will be games later that may make me feel. This podcast for me, this particular time, is relatively easy because the reasons why the final score was 27-24 are very clear. Ultimately, they won the game, and as a fan, that's my priority. So I'm not particularly worked up about it. I don't believe a win is a win. I still don't. But I think it is important that we talk about whether we're laughing, mocking, or even somehow brought to think. We have to talk about what they say after the game, because I want to try and this segment for me really is about, is there any insight? Again, the expectations are zero, especially with Matt Patricia, who, even though it doesn't sound like, I like Matt Patricia as a guy and a coach. I think this is an industry standard. Coaches don't say anything. Players sometimes, because they're more emotional, they're not more emotional, more invested. They tend to maybe not have been given the talking points by the guy that works there, tells them, hey, this is what you say. I forgot what the guy's name is. I don't think he's there anymore. But there's a guy that works for the Lions that basically comes up to the coach after the game and kind of gives him buzzwords, buzz terms. This is what you should say. This is what you shouldn't. Public relations director or some kind of title like that, right? So I like to always give you a couple of bits from Matt Patricia and then a player or two. But I don't particularly want it to be a lengthy segment because there's nothing there. They're not going to say anything, right? So some of it would just be a waste of time to try and break down what they said about the game. Again, it's a reaction. I'm going to do my best to stay out of last week or next week and try and just stay focused on this game. So if there's something of value, my goal is to say, hey, this is what I think they meant. A lot of it is translation, right? They're speaking coach speak, and I'm going to tell you what that sounds like as a fan. Agree or disagree, that's what I'm going to try and do. So Patricia will generally say the same stuff, right? So if you look at what we talked about last week, go back to last week's podcast. Mike and I have a sort of running joke. We could just pre-record this segment and just run it in every podcast. It wouldn't be that horrible. But this week he talked specifically, which was good. He gave the players credit. He said you have to be mentally tough to fight through the things that we fight through, that they fight through. Whatever it is, whether it's mistakes, whether it's another team's momentum, the road crowd, you have to be mentally tough. Now, I agree with him on that. It's a general statement because to win in any league at any level, when the cream starts to rise to the top and you get to who are the good teams, and to me in the National Football League, it takes 7 weeks, right? Irrespective of the schedule, how it breaks down. After about week 7, I feel like I could look at the standings and look at statistics and naked eye what I see. And I could pick 4 teams and the Super Bowl champions in that group, right? Because it is, particularly in football, it is a game of attrition, right? It is the season and a game, an individual game. Like in the first quarter, everybody's fresh. It's easy. Everybody's talented. Every guy at that level is incredibly talented. So when I say something like a guy's a bum, I don't mean a real bum because I couldn't do what he does on my best day. But within the framework of his job in the NFL, he may not be performing well. He may be performing like a bum. So that type of mental toughness to do that, and I'm leading directly to one of his quotes, Patricia. So I think that this is the point where I have to do this apology, right? I blasted Jamal Agnew last week, right? I believe I called for his job, which I generally don't do. But I thought he had performed very, very poorly for both of the first 2 weeks. And they benched him, which I thought gave me the opportunity to talk about him on the podcast. You open it up by benching him and putting in Amendola. But Patricia specifically went out of his way to say this kid worked really hard. And linked in with the mental toughness comments, it is. When you don't do your job well, and just no matter what your job is, wherever you are, right? If and it's happened to me before, right? I had something that I didn't do well at a job, and my boss chose to sit me down and say to me, You're not doing your job, right? Whatever's going on, whatever's causing this, currently, you're not doing your job well. So you need to do whatever it takes. Maybe it's work harder. Maybe it's prepare better. Maybe it's a mental thing where you need to get distractions out of your way. But for whatever reason, whatever the cause, you are not doing your job well. To go from that meeting, that engagement with your boss, and come back and be really, really effective, especially in a week, takes a mental toughness. Some people fold up. They get in their own heads, they lose confidence, and they just curl up and they wither, metaphorically, right? Some people can't come back from that. So an apology, not even an apology, because last week I think I was fair. I was basing it on what he had done. But credit, that's what it is. Not an apology. Credit to Jamal Agnew. Absolute credit to come back from, you got benched. You got benched because you weren't performing well. And it was mostly you. I mean, I think benching you screams it's not the coach, it's not the special teams coach, who I also called out last week. It is not your teammates not doing their part. By benching a guy, rightly or wrongly, the perception you give a fan like me is, it is your fault, Jamal Agnew. We're taking you out of the game because you're not doing your job well. So credit to Jamal Agnew for coming back from that, because that's a low point. No matter what you do for a living, that chewing out by your boss, or they promote somebody else over you, whatever, that moment is low. You know, you could be the most confident person in the world. That moment is low because you have to look in the mirror. And I feel like Jamal Agnew looked in the mirror, and Matt Patricia's comments were, the kid never lost I never lost confidence in the kid. And I used the kid, you know, not in a disrespectful manner, but the guy actually went back to work, and he worked really hard this week. He had a great week of practice. These are Patricia's words, right? So he said something relatively meaningful, but I think there's a subtle message there too. So it may be that Matt Patricia might actually be a good coach. Maybe they did something, and maybe it was John Bonamego, the special teams coordinator. Maybe it was Patricia directly, right? Demonstrated the ability to motivate players. You hear terms like, has this guy lost a team? Like, broadcasters are real quick to jump to, he's lost a team. I don't even know what that means. I honestly don't know what that means. I think these are adults. They have jobs. People generally want to do their jobs well. But when you don't do it well, and you are publicly chastised, which is what benching Jamal Agnew last week was publicly chastising him and literally in front of everyone blaming him. And I reacted accordingly on last week's podcast. For him to come back and, by Patricia's words, work really hard, he never lost confidence. And quite frankly, he played very well yesterday. Now, the sample size isn't huge, but his job, which I said last week, he had one punt return. I think it was 21 yards. Really good. Helped with field position. And the kickoff, obviously, is a game-impacting play. You go 100 yards on a kick, first play of the game, you immediately diffuse the crowd, right? You immediately set the tone. They had this long drive, which resulted in a field goal, but they felt good about themselves. And literally 15 seconds later, everybody in the stadium's like, what? Now what? Your defense goes back out, right? But they're amped up. We only got 3, but we got to lead. We scored on our first possession. This guy literally just takes the air out of the balloon like that. And I am firmly of the belief that there are critical plays at every juncture of the game. A lot of fans, a lot of broadcasters, a lot of people will narrow a game down to the last 3 minutes, the last 6 minutes. Oh, these are the... No. That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. The game can be just as easily impacted on a play in the second quarter, right? And I'll talk about a bunch of those. I'll talk about a number of those as it is in the last 6 minutes of the game. If you see it that way, if you believe in things like momentum and you understand how a team has a plan, and because of time and situation and down and distance, they change their plan. To me, the best example is 2 turnovers in the second quarter. The Lions get 2 field goals instead of 2 touchdowns. That's a different game. It's a different game. Philadelphia has to regroup, at halftime and come out with a different approach because they're down maybe 18 or instead of down 10, right? You have to, all that has a ripple effect. So I believe that every juncture of the game has a really important piece. But back to Patricia. He spoke specifically about Agnew at length, and I thought some of it was, hey, look at me, I coached up this kid who was down, and my yanking him from the game worked, I motivated him. Maybe. But giving the players credit and talking about mental toughness, there was a little bit of a message there. But he didn't say a ton. And so the other guy who spoke at length, well, a number of guys I listened to, most of them didn't have anything that I could come to the podcast and make of any value, but Jarrad Davis. And I'm a big Jarrad Davis guy. He missed the first 2 games. I think Jarrad Davis's presence was felt in play, and there are guys, and I have talked about Jelani Tavai in probably every podcast. I am really, really high on the rookie middle linebacker from Hawaii. I am clear about that. He and Jarrad Davis together, along with Christian Jones, who had a decent game yesterday, and Devon Kennard, I'm not sure the linebacking core isn't the strength of this football team. Now, the receivers have made a case. I'm not sure the best unit on this football team isn't that set of linebackers, and they're young. They're not old, but I think that the defense that they play, which I got to be honest, I still haven't figured out, right? I'm just a fan. I'm not an expert. There are times it looks like a really soft zone that has gaping holes. It certainly did for Keenan Allen last week. But I hear guys talking about man concepts a lot, and you often see man coverage, right? Secondarily, you will see one guy chasing one guy. The trail position is what they'll be in, which I think is predicated on the ability athletically of a Darius Slay or a Rashawn Melvin to close and make the play. And there are times they do and there are times they don't. But then there are times you see a guy like wide open, right? And you can tell that is some kind of, I saw a play where Trey Flowers dropped back into coverage and was covering a guy 12 yards down the field. That's not, I don't think that's man, right? So hybrid is the word I'll continue to use. I think the entire concept, and if you want to call it the Patriot way, you can. I think a lot of the concepts, specifically on defense, are around flexibility. They talk about this with individual players a lot. Position flex, a guy who can play tackle and in, a guy who can play along the line in multiple positions. There is a value, obviously, to that related to both depth and from like within a game, keeping guys fresh and what you can do rotationally, but also depth from the standpoint that if somebody goes down, like a Mike Daniels, you can rotate guys. You don't have to literally replace him with a direct backup. You can slide Trey Flowers over, or you can move Snacks over, whatever. So position flex, as it relates to individuals, I think is very important. But also, I think, and I don't know if this is a term, scheme flexibility is something that they do a lot of. I think they look different throughout the game. And I think it is the idea, I think, again, as a fan, not an expert, is you're less predictable, right? When the offense is in the room on Wednesday looking at film, you can have concepts that look like zone when in fact they're man because of both personnel and the way you line up. And then you can move a couple of guys, you can audible out of it and move into something that's more zone. So I think a lot of the game now defensively is wanting the quarterback to see something when he's coming to the line that's not real, that's not legitimate, that appears to be one thing, but is actually something else. And back to the point, Jarrad Davis with Jelani Tavai, with that linebacking core, guys who can put their hand on the ground and play end or back up in coverage. Trey Flowers, 12 yards down the field in coverage should be a good thing. I don't want to see a bunch of it. Christian Jones didn't have his best day coverage-wise. So that's something they can look at on film and say, look, we need to adjust this and not have Christian Jones out here in coverage. A healthy Jarrad Davis makes Tavai better, and it makes that linebacking core pretty formidable. But he specifically said he Still needs to improve. He's just scratching the surface. He's not fully there yet. Feels a lot better. He feels like the unit played well. The common theme among everyone I listened to in the postgame was, we have a lot of things to fix. We can still be better. Now that concept that's straight cornbread is what that is. You're 2-0-1 and you're not playing well yet. And I agree. Now, there's a theory that they could be worse, right? They've gotten really lucky, and what if they don't get the breaks? But there's also a theory that I don't think they played their best game. I don't think Stafford's played his best game. I don't think the running game certainly hasn't. I mean, Carrion's due for a breakout. Now, the receiving core deserves special shout-out across the board. Week 1, it was Hawkinson. Last week, it was Galladay. This week, it was Marvin. They have weapons, right? Everybody stays healthy. They have skill position weapons. Amendola made a fantastic catch. I hope he's okay because it looks like he got hurt on the play. But they have weapons. If they get the running game going effectively, they have the ability to be a scary football team. Defensively, there's a lot to fix, right? There's a lot to fix. Slade's not going to play like he played last week every week. In fact, he played very well today. Again, he reached for his hamstring. I hope it's not that bad. Injuries are always, but and by the way, I don't do the whole injury thing. Everybody's got injuries. So you can sit there and say, oh, the Eagles were missing all these guys. That's fine. Nobody cries for us when we're missing guys. That's part of the game. It's still a game of football. So, yeah, and I'm not upset that LaShawn, other than I have him on my fantasy team, I'm not upset that Shady might not play Sunday. Fine. I wish him all the best. I hope he and his family are great. If he doesn't play Sunday, my feelings won't be hurt. So Patricia talked a little bit about Agnew and giving the players credit. I thought his comments about mental toughness were important because if they are mentally tough, they're going to need to win more of these games like this. And I think good teams win games like this. And I would say they have 2 wins and a tie, and they have not played a good football game yet. That's probably a good thing. That should be a good thing. We'll see. They do have to be better this week because where my homies is coming to town, and it is not going to be pretty. That guy might set records. I hope not. But Patrick Mahomes might set some records this week. And I did get to mention my guy, so I'm going to move on to my favorite segment. Let's talk about number 9. So this segment is basically for me. You know, as Mike and I talked, I said I have always felt that it's tough, right? The two hardest jobs, this is a cliche, not mine, I didn't make it up. 2 hardest jobs in Detroit are the Lions quarterback and the Red Wings goalie. I have always thought that's odd. I don't know why we can't just look at a guy's performance, look at his statistics, look at people objectively. Now, the reality is that's counterintuitive to being a fan. If they're not playing well, you need somebody to blame. And that's the highest paid guy on most teams. If things aren't going right, you want somebody to yell at. That's life, that's sports, that's certainly fandom. And the quarterback of the Lions kind of has had that job, right? For a year, all 700 of the guys who played that position in my lifetime have kind of had that job. But I truly believe, and this is not cornbread and Kool-Aid, specifically to number 9. I think I said more than once, I'm a Stafford guy. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're waiting for the point where I blast the quarterback, it's probably not going to happen. Now, there will be games where I will review his performance and I will be as objective as I'm capable of being. And I think that is somewhere near the middle, but not totally in the middle. Because I am not a broadcaster, I'm not a journalist, I'm a fan. And I will keep saying that because I don't want anybody to ever think, oh, I'm listening to a podcast, this guy must... Nope, I'm just a dude that loves the Lions. And in particular, I love our quarterback. Sorry. So I'm really not going to apologize. I said unapologetically a Stafford guy. I am. So, but this is today's a really good example of like what I mean. It really crystallizes what I mean. I will say to you statistically, like he didn't have a good fantasy football day. He didn't. But I look and just a couple of hours after the game, the thought process is, that game was a struggle. They barely won. Emphasis on won. They barely won. But then when you look at his performance, and I know that for this podcast, I specifically want to talk about him. And it's not defending him. I want to talk about him. I told Mike, part of this, because every Lions fan has a feeling, some feeling for this guy. And there are people that hate him, that want to run him out of town. There are people who can't disassociate salary with performance and what his job is to what he makes. And you will hear that guy, he makes all that money. His job is his job. If he's doing it well, he's doing it well. And at the end of the day, he didn't stick up a bank. He didn't come into your house and take money out of your pocket. The people who don't like him, probably jealous. But at the end of the day, somebody came to him, put a contract in front of him and his agent and said, hey, Matthew Stafford, we want to give you, 27, 30, whatever the number is, $30 million a year to play quarterback for the Detroit Lions. All he did was grab a pen and sign it. That's literally all he did. And if you're mad at him for that, then you're a different kind of dude, and I don't know what to tell you. Today, he was 18 to 32, 201 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. QBR was 85.5. Now QBR does matter. I will always quote the QBR. It doesn't matter that much to me. 18 to 32 is not good. Now, I could break it down and talk to you about drops and all kinds of nonsense. The numbers that matter, no interceptions. That's the number that matters, no interceptions. He didn't need to throw for 450 yards today to win the game. If he needed that, then the scheme sucks, and they probably would have lost, by the way. The one touchdown doesn't bother me. They ran for one and returned a kickoff. The 85.5 has a formula that breaks it down and can like Mahomes was like 130, right? That matters. At the end of the day, the Chiefs won and the Lions won. The number that matters, again, no interceptions to me. I will consistently talk about what I think he needs to do. I want a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That is the most important thing to me that Stafford can do this year. If he finishes the year, and I think right now he's right on target, 6 touchdowns, 2 picks, I think. If you finish with a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, if he does, they will probably be a playoff team. And if they're not, it won't be his fault. That's what I'll say. So what do I need him to do? I need him to be effective. Now, because of who he is and simple arm talent, there's going to be games where we're like, wow. And because of who he is and his mentality to playing the position, there's going to be times where we're shaking our heads. And they're different. And I'm going to probably, because I want to, spend specific time breaking down the difference between a bad throw and a bad decision. Bad throws will never bother me. Bad throws will almost never bother me. Bad decisions will drive me crazy, right? So I think that he had a really bad drive in the third quarter. He single-handedly, in my opinion, killed the drive, right? I think that he had one of each. He had a bad throw. He threw it late. Marvin was open. Marvin ended up being out of bounds because it was a late throw. The right decision. Marvin was open. That's where you go with the ball. For whatever reason, his timing was off and he was late. That's a bad throw. Doesn't drive me crazy. Marvin almost made a spectacular catch, but that's a bad throw, and those happen. And the greats, Patrick Mahomes makes bad throws. Tom Brady makes bad throws. That happens. I can live with those. Like the next play or 2 plays later, he scrambles around to avoid a sack, and it looks like he closed his eyes and just threw the ball down the middle of the field, right? Trying to get, I'm going to say it was Jesse James. It could have been Logan Thomas. I think it was one of the tight ends. I'm going to elaborate on that play later because I need to talk about that play some more in another segment. That was a bad decision. Late over the middle is a horrible decision. Just blindly chucking it up, unless somebody's offsides and you got a free play, that's a bad decision, right? And I think that drive was like what you will get sometimes. He'll just have a bad drive, right? Doesn't have a lot of them. He'll just have sometimes when he's either trying to do too much or something. I don't know. But in that drive, he had both a bad throw to Marvin on the sideline and a bad decision, right? There are times when I think, by the way, he wasn't sacked again today. We'll get to that too. Because it is part the offensive line. But in this segment, I think Matthew Stafford is using his feet better. I think he is navigating the pocket better. He's moving, he's stepping up, he's sliding, he's throwing the ball away better. He's doing a lot of things that are contributing to that back-to-back no sack number. So I think it's important to acknowledge his part in that, as well as the offensive line, who I also think is oddly good, but I still don't know because of the running, right? But we'll get to them. As far as Stafford, right, the touchdown to Marvin was a great throw. I don't know, it was tough. It was a touch throw because when it left his hand, I was sure he had overthrown him. And Marvin was able to get under it. And again, Marvin had a great day and made a great catch there. That throw was good. He has these just flicks of the ball. His arm can do stuff that other people can't do. So I thought that was a really nice touch pass, which he didn't do a lot. We're usually impressed with his rifle, right? We're usually impressed with him doing firing balls into locations that not many guys can do. And I think last week's slant pass to Galladay was an example of, I think there's only a handful of dudes in the league that can make that throw. So that was good. I think he threw to he had receptions by 9 different receivers. So half of his 18 balls, no, that's not what I mean. He threw to 9 different receivers. He spread the ball around, is basically what I'm saying. I think the weapons in the offense, and I mentioned that earlier, are critical. Because if they can just start keying on a guy, any one guy, you're going to lose some effectiveness in your passing game. So I think when you only complete 18 passes and 9 of them were to 9 different receivers, that could be the scheme. As much as I am not sure about Darrell Bevel still, that could be the scheme. But I know that makes you more effective. I have no doubt they're more effective because he can spread the ball around. So when he is, 2 weeks ago, it was TJ Hawkinson. Last week it was Galladay. This week it was Marvin. That makes you inherently more difficult to game plan, right? The team Kansas City is going to have a meeting today or tomorrow or I don't know, Wednesday. And they're going to have to look at all of these guys. They're going to have to think about what's the difference schematically between when Hawkinson's in the game versus Jesse James versus Logan Thomas. How are they going to use J.D. McKissick? How do we cover Marvin versus Galladay? What do? Do we roll the safety to one of them, then the other goes off? Are we going to figure out how to get Kerryon more involved? This is the thing that a lot of people think the game is simply won on Sunday, and I don't believe that. I think that when they have to look at film of the Philadelphia game, the Chiefs, they have to look at how did Stafford make decisions? Where was he going with the ball? How did he decide when he would check down? He's seeing the field better. He's moving better. So I like that 9 receivers caught passes, particularly when he only completed 18 passes. That number is impressive, and it's been consistent. So more than just today's game, it was like that in week 1, and it was like that last week. So I think that it might be something we can rely on, spreading the ball around and understanding how that impacts the defense's preparation during the week. And I'm giving Stafford most of the credit for it because I think he is in better shape. I still say that. He just looks lighter and more mobile. He doesn't look like his back hurts, which I contend it did last year. So he's moving around, and because he's navigating the pocket more effectively, he is having an opportunity to go through his progressions and get to the 4th and 5th guy and spread the ball around and create things that they have to look at. The Chiefs have to look at on film this week and say, wow, we have to be aware of that. And that's, if nothing else, it is taking time that they have to prepare for. And that's time they might not look at film of Galladay, or time they might not focus on run defense. And it might help Kerryon have a better game. So I think my overall on Stafford's game yesterday was enough. Right? I'm not going to say good. I'm not going to say bad. I can't say efficient. Enough. And guess what? Sometimes that's all I need. That's all we need, because they won the game. They won a road game against a team a lot of people feel can compete for the NFC. And keep your injury crap. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Show up with who you have. When we had Decker and JD out last week, nobody gave a damn. Nobody talked about it. They didn't say anything about it. And when we lose some game, we're going to have key guys out. Nobody's going to talk about it. We might lose Slay and Mike Daniels this week. And nobody's going to give a damn. The Chiefs won't care. They're not going to spot us 12 points because we're missing a couple of key players. That's not how any of this works. So I don't buy the game isn't as impressive because they didn't have Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffries. That ain't our fault. We're not going to be held accountable for it or apologize for it. They won the game. Take the win, and that's fine. I'm not so focused on that. I'm focused on I believe they need to get better. I don't love the word luck, and I don't really think so because Jared Davis caused one of those fumbles. Fumbles get caused sometimes, and some of the things you do defensively confuses them at the line. And there were a lot of times where there were coverage sacks, and Carson Wentz didn't know where to go with the football. And those were things impacted by the Lions and things the Lions were doing. So I don't buy luck. I don't want to hear nonsense about the guys they were missing. I think Stafford did enough. He did enough. And there are weeks where all I want him to do is enough. And I think with him in particular, historically in the past, he has had the propensity to try and do too much and not be okay with just doing enough. So I like physically what I see in him. I like his decision making a lot more. I'm still lukewarm on the scheme because there are moments when it looks great and creative and innovative, and they're doing a lot of things that are not just trick plays, but misdirection plays. A misdirection doesn't necessarily have to be a trick play. Something that has the defense thinking. It's working against the instincts of the defense. And if you don't do that, then your dive plays into the line are wasted because what you're trying to do is build sort of a set of expectations for them that when they see this formation and they see this motion, their film study during the week and what we did in the first quarter and the second quarter, now it's late in the third at a critical time, and they see this formation again, and they see us lined up this way, they think we're going to do, that's when that has to work. So you have to do those things or I'm going to lose my mind on these dive plays. And I don't think they're good for carry-on. I don't think they're that effective. If you don't nail some trick play later, it's just wasted. So all in all for Stafford, I think my single word is enough. And there are weeks where that's all I want is enough. Enough to get the win against a good road team, even though they were depleted. And now we move on to the segment called Highs and Lows, where we're going to talk about plays and performances, good and bad, that stood out. You know, you can pull some things out and say, hey, this was a big deal, or this was not a big deal. This was good, this was bad. These plays, not necessarily players yet, we'll get to that, but plays in particular. So on to highs and lows. So every week I wonder how do I want to do this? You know, so there's a philosophy that says give me the bad news first, right? So start with the lows, then come back with the highs. I think the first week I did highs then lows, and last week I think I did lows then highs. This week I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to jump around for no reason other than to keep it fresh. No real reason. First one is a high. No sacks allowed. Second straight week. I think that is probably not luck. I think it's a product of a lot of things. Well, not a lot of things, a few things. One, I think the scheme has something to do with it. So I'll give Darrell Bevell some credit for the fact that they have not allowed a sack and kept Stafford clean for 2 straight weeks. Second, I give Stafford credit. Moving around in the pocket, making good decisions with the football, understanding when to get rid of the ball. Sometimes, you know, he missed Marvin on a wide open critical play, bounced it to him when he was open. And all he's got to do is stop and set his feet. So I think there's a degree of the decisions that Stafford's making, where to go with the football, whether or not to move around the pocket, that are contributing to the fact that he gets hit, but he's not getting sacked. But 2 weeks in a row with no sacks, it's not coincidental they won both those games. And that's not the only reason, obviously, but that certainly is a part of it. Now, on the other side of that, another positive is we had 3 sacks, and we got to call the name Trey Flowers a number of times. He had one of them. I think Christian Jones and Snacks had the other 2, but they also got pressure. I was really starting to get concerned about their ability to get pressure. And it doesn't always look like pressure, But Carson Wentz had to step up into the pocket a lot. Some of those led to big runs. But I think when you are getting a consistent rush, that is more disruptive. It is more positive than a negative. Now, if he escapes, because they don't utilize a spy on the quarterback. Well, they didn't on Wentz. Other quarterbacks they might. They didn't on Carson Wentz. So I'll live with that. But what's happening is you're disrupting their plays because when he has to step up and move, timing is off. That's the importance of pressure. It is not always about getting there. In fact, oftentimes it's not about getting there. It's about making the quarterback, and it builds. It accumulates over the course of the game, making him feel uncomfortable. And in as much as I like Carson Wentz, and I think he's a very talented young quarterback, I thought he looked uncomfortable for most of the game. So the 3 sacks is important, particularly since one of them was from Trey Flowers, who impacted the game yesterday. But the pressure was equally important. A negative that I've already talked about is the penalties, right? So I'm going to elaborate a little bit. The number is 9, and I want to explain why I said the yardage doesn't matter, and actually the number doesn't matter. So early in the game, and I should remember exactly what it is, Coleman. Justin Coleman's his name. Justin Coleman commits defensive holding. It might have been called pass interference. He was beaten. I'm sorry, his guy gave him a double move, and it would have been a touchdown. It's just that simple. The guy would have been that open, and if Coleman doesn't grab him, he catches a very easy touchdown pass. And Coleman held him. Got called, got 5 yards. The Lions eventually held them to a field goal. That's a 4-point penalty. There's no other way around it. He would have scored on that play, and because Coleman held him, because he just got beat, because that guy plays in the NFL and he's really talented too, and sometimes that guy makes a move. Got beat on the play, and he held. That's a good penalty. That is by every definition a very good penalty. Now, at the moment, I thought, come on. But then I saw the replay and I'm like, no, you got to grab him. Guess what? That happens on the offensive line to save your quarterback from getting sacked. It happens probably on the defensive line. It happens in special teams. That's a good penalty, right? There are other penalties that were not good penalties, and we know what they are. We sometimes do I don't know what it is, some kind of scheme thing on the line, the defensive line, and a twist game, and we do all these trickery things, and jumping into the neutral zone, lining up in the neutral zone is the worst penalty in the history of football because you could just look down the line and see the ball. That's never made sense. But jumping into the neutral zone is an aggressive penalty. You're trying to make a play. But I think 2 of those were on 3rd down and less than 5, and they resulted in first downs. You just can't do it. You just can't do it. And I can see in what they're doing that they're trying to create matchups, and they're moving guys along the line. And there are plays where Ashawn Robinson is at left defensive end standing up. Right? Ashawn, right? Who had a really good game, by the way. I want to make sure he gets specific mention. I thought he was effective. I think the entire defensive front played better. But any penalty, no, that's not right. Any encroachment penalty, I think is the right term. Whatever offsides officially is called. Or when you jump into the neutral zone, causing the offensive guy to move, which results in a defensive penalty. If it's less than 5, you've got to know down and distance, and you just have to be disciplined. And say that under no circumstances do I give them this free first down. You make them work. Now, the difference is on the Coleman play, he got beat. That guy made a good play. You grab him, you take the penalty, you credit that guy. Pre-snap, you jump into the neutral zone on 3rd and 4? 3rd and 4. You were probably going to get off the field. It's 3rd and 4. You cannot jump into the neutral zone and give them that first down. You can't gift them first downs like that. You can't do it. I think it was the kid Strong. I think that's his name. And then, like, late in the game, Trey Flowers gets a roughing penalty. Now, I'm going to be honest. I didn't like the call. I didn't like the call at all. I think it was BS because there was no aggressive move to the quarterback. I'm going to be honest. I think he just lost his balance. I think he got pushed, and his momentum just carried him into the quarterback. So I'm not arguing the lateness of it. The ball was gone. Was it late? Sure. Was it roughing? Right? If I trip and fall into you, is that roughing? If your guy pushes me and my momentum carries me into you, is that a roughing the passer call? And that might have been a third down as well. I would call that one questionable at best, right? Penalties just drive me crazy. They just, I mean, we know, I talk about it, I can't help. But those ones that hurt like that, and offsides or jumping into the neutral zone on third and less than 4, second and less than 4, anything that's less than 5 yards and results in a first down is a really bad penalty. And just by definition, lining up in the neutral zone or jumping in, encroachment, whichever one of those it is, those are focus and concentration penalties. And I will never love those. Aggressive play penalties, fine. You got beat by the receiver and you held him as a corner, fine. I don't have a problem with those. I don't. Roughing, that one was questionable, but in general, roughing the passer penalties suck. Because I don't think they impact the play. The ball is often gone in a bad throw or whatever, and you just gift it to them, right? And they protect the quarterbacks at all costs. So I get the league. I understand what's happening, but I don't love them. I don't love them at all. But dumb penalties, the Lions still do a lot of them. I think I just mentioned 3. Strong, Flowers, and there was another one. Someone else either lined up or jumped into the neutral zone. The dumb penalties kill me. So I don't care that they committed 9 penalties. I care that 3 penalties were extremely costly. And those are the ones you have to clean up, especially when they're just focus and concentration penalties like jumping into the neutral zone. I think you just have to be better. You have to decide and know that you want to be better. Another good one, though, is I saw special teams improvement. I mean, you have to admit it. The punt return was good. The kick return was good. There was special teams improvement. And for me, I mean, outside of the block, right? We'll chalk up the block as a negative, although that might have just been a great play by Malcolm Jenkins. I only saw one replay. That might have just been their guy made a great play. But you can't get that field goal blocked. You can't get that field goal blocked right there. So you got to figure out a way to get that done. And I think that they obviously spent time in the special teams room cleaning up some stuff, which is the number one thing I begged for last week. Mike, we talked about that. We called John Bonamego out by name. You compared him to a guy in Led Zeppelin. We mentioned him right by name. So I like to believe that John Bonamego listened to the podcast, took this. He didn't. I'm sure he didn't. But they worked on it. And the kick return was great. The 2 field goals were great. The overall performance of special teams was noticeably better, minus the block, which I honestly think might have just been Malcolm Jenkins made a hell of a play. So from a overall highs and lows, those are some of the things that stood out to me. Now, in terms of actual plays that impacted, quietly, negative, the most impactful play may have been Darius Slay and the hamstring, right? If that's serious, if he's going to miss weeks, yeah, that hurts. And again, I will always mention how much my brother hates Darius Slay, but he's wrong. Darius Slay is a fine corner. Last week, not counting, Darius Slay is one of the best corners in football. So if he's out an extended period, as well as they played after he left, and they did, I will say right now, they played well after he left. And I like Rashawn Melvin. I think that turned out to be a good signing. And I like Coleman. I'm sorry, you can't take a Pro Bowl level player out at what I would say is the 3rd most important position on your football team and not expect it to hurt. So my hope, and I don't know, it's too early for me to have gotten any injury reports, but we've all seen it. He reached for the back of his thigh. That is, and I don't even know if it's his hamstring. Like I said, I don't have a report, but he clearly reached for the back of his thigh, and that's generally what that is. So the hope is that Slay's hamstring is minor, and even if you have to sit him a game, I would never throw a game and say, hey, the chances of you beating Kansas City with Darius Slay are probably not that high, so just sit him. I think that's a reasonable concept. I wouldn't be mad if they came out. They would never come out and say that. We don't think we're going to win this game anyway, so we're just going to sit him. But again, I'm a fan. I'm not a coach, not a player, not a broadcaster. I wouldn't be bothered if he was down this week, especially if it's going to allow him to then get the bye week off, right, and come back for the Green Bay game healthy. To me, that's just some common sense. Doesn't mean they'll do it. In fact, they might not. And it's probably not a decision. It's going to be a doctor thing. The doctor's just going to tell him he's out for a while because it's severe or it's minor and he can't play Sunday. And that's great. Now he gets 2 weeks off. He gets 3 weeks off essentially, right? Then he comes back ready for Green Bay, which is much more important to me. That game is shaping up to be pretty critical. No matter what happens Sunday at Ford Field against the Chiefs, and that is not a pessimistic Lion fan saying, I know we're going to lose, blah, blah. It's none of that. I fully expect them to compete, and I hope they win the game. But I am already in a mindset where I need them to health up during the bye week and come back. I'm thrilled that the game after the bye is at Lambeau. Should not be cold yet, so we won't have to do the December frozen tundra nonsense. But more than anything, you will probably get some guys feeling better. Jared Davis feeling better, with each game. And hopefully the Slay thing isn't too bad. But I think the Slay injury was not huge. I think the blocked field goal was impactful because it almost cost them the game, right? But it turns out it didn't. So I think from impactful plays, you can't ignore the kick return, right? I think the fumble in the second quarter by Sanders, Miles Sanders, their running back, was important because they were in a position where they could have started to get some momentum. They could have gotten the crowd back into it. They could have gotten points out of that drive. And I don't know that they would have, but they could have. And I think to get that turnover was really started with the kick return, taking the crowd out of it. The crowd was never a factor. And I don't really believe crowds are ever that much a factor. I think if anywhere, it's at Ford Field where they can get loud. And when you go back to that, I want to say it was Chicago game, maybe. We got all these false starts because the crowd was going crazy. But in an open air stadium like Philly, I don't know that the crowd can inherently impact the game that much. But momentum is real. And when they get into it and the team is playing better, you've seen that. I do believe in that. I just think that they were booing them in the second quarter. I don't know if that impacts players or coaches. I know that there may be a chance that it impacts the opposite team. If you're the road team and you're winning the game and their fans are booing them, I'm sure that doesn't feel bad. I'm not sure if it helps you or makes you feel good, but I'm sure it doesn't feel bad. So I think that there were some highs. I think the kick return is good. The indication that the special teams is playing better is good. I think Jared Davis being back is really, really good. And pressure on the quarterback. Those are the highs for me. I think the lows are still the same. Got to clean up the penalties, particularly the dumb penalties. There's still work on special teams. And I need Darius Slay to be back for Green Bay. I don't know that I care as much if he plays Sunday. If it will long-term help. And if you tell me he can be back at 80% Sunday, or he can take 3 weeks off and be back 100% for Green Bay, I sit him. And that might seem like it's against my step on the neck trophy room mentality, but it's not. The trophy room mentality, the step on the neck mentality, is actually a long play. It's actually a long play. It's not a reactionary, just do this right now. It's actually a long play. So I hope he's fine, but my feelings wouldn't be hurt if he sat out and we didn't see him Sunday, because I think that would be in the best long-term interest of Darius and obviously for the team as well. So moving on right to there's a few guys that we have to talk about, and this is our segment we call So Here's a Guy. So this segment, Mike, I know it was always your idea of pick a guy or individual guys and let's just talk about their performance, right? I know that's what you really wanted, but I'm going to violate this probably every week, so you should just prepare yourself. I am often going to pick a group of guys because sometimes it is a group of guys. And in the spirit of it, I'm going to start negative first. The refs. I'm generally not officiating guy. I'm generally not refs cost me the game guy. And I'm not doing that today. This segment is point out a guy, one person, and similar to, so like the Stafford segment is really here's a guy, but I'm going to do Stafford every week. So we separated that out. Here's a guy is really about, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the impact to the game of a guy. Let's look at how a single guy, or as is obviously going to be the case with me, sometimes it's a group of guys. So I got to start with the refs. I mean, from a reaction standpoint, and they certainly, the Lions won the game, right? So it's odd that I'm gonna complain about the refs, but I think it is so important because eventually they are going to cost the Lions a game if this nonsense keeps up, right? And I'm just going to go, right? I'm going to start with, I don't know that I've ever in my life seen, I think egregious is the word I don't use the word egregious a lot. It's a word that you can't use a lot. It just doesn't fit, right? I have never seen a more egregious penalty than I think it was Miles Killebrew? Yeah, it was Miles Killebrew's face mask. He literally twisted the guy's head all the way around, and for good measure, I'm just going to take the helmet. Just ripped it right off. It was horrible. I don't know how 6, 7, there's probably 10 officials on the field. Not one of them. This guy's head got ripped off. Somebody should get fined. And again, here I am calling for somebody to get in trouble. Something has to happen. I don't know if Killebrew should be fined because he was on the sideline smiling about it. Like a cat that just, what does a cat do? Eat the canary? Yeah. I don't want to mix metaphors. That's a whole nother podcast. I think it's important that the referees dance this delicate balance of, we don't want to do anything that negatively impacts the game, but at the same time, we have a job. Everybody out there has a job. The cameraman has a job. The dude holding the yardsticks has a job. The ball boys have a job, right? Do your job. Do your job better. I think that my solution is simple. You publish their names, publish the percentage of calls they get right and wrong, and hold them accountable. Fire dudes. If those numbers probably exist, the NFL will never publish them. It's not fair. Now, I'm going to balance this out by saying being a referee in the NFL should be a full-time job. You should get paid. You shouldn't have to have another job. Shouldn't be an insurance man on the side or any of that nonsense. Nothing against insurance men, but referees in the NFL should have full-time jobs. And in the offseason, they should be in training. They should be working out and conditioning. They should be watching film. They should be doing all the things that most of us do every day to try and make us better at our jobs, right? Well, like I said, whether it's training or whatever it needs to be, the NFL needs to take ownership of the performance of the referees and stop treating them like part-time contractors. Again, nothing against part-time contractors, but prioritize the performance of the referees as much as you do the bottom line, right? Because we saw in New Orleans last year, they impacted the championship. Not that the Saints would have necessarily beaten the Patriots. That's not the point. They impacted your championship. You're going to start getting to integrity of the game conversations. You're going to have talking heads on the 4-letter network talking about integrity of the game if you, the league, the Shield, Goodell, the owners, take ownership of the performance of the officials of your game. Because that no call, was horrible. And there were others that were not nearly as... That one was so egregious, it needed 2 or 3 minutes on its own. And oh, by the way, the Lions committed that penalty. We benefited from it. And I am a fan of the Lions, and I'm telling you that was disgusting. It was disgusting that there was no call there. I didn't feel good about it. I wasn't happy about it. I'm a little bit pissed at Miles Killebrew that he was happy that he got away with it. Because I'm not a win if you can, lose if you must, always cheat guy. No, play the game right. Play the game fair. And if you rip a guy's head off, you should have gotten 15 yards and maybe thrown out of the game. I don't know. That might be too far. But you got to call a stupid penalty. Because you know what? That has happened to us. We have had that. We had Brandon Pettigrew in Dallas. We know what it's like to be egreged in a way that just makes no sense. And it makes you want to quit watching the game, right? And I don't know that changes the game. I remember the down and distance and time of that play. It could have impacted the game, but that's not the point. It should have been 15 yards, which if I'm an Eagles fan today, I am writing a letter. I'm writing a strongly worded email is the new hotness, right? I'm saying something to somebody because that could have impacted the game. I don't know. I know that it is absolutely unacceptable that they don't make that call. It is whether it's against my team or not, to not make that call is absolutely unacceptable. And if the ownership of the league, the owners and the commissioner do not take accountability for the performance of the officials, this will continue. And there were other plays. There was a roughing penalty against Trey Flowers, I mentioned earlier. That was a bad call. I'm sorry. I know what roughing the quarterback looks like. We know what it is. That's how you have to treat some of these calls. Stop thinking. Stop overthinking. You have to. When it's a penalty, it's clear. There's some penalties that are clear, right? And roughing the passer, to me, is like porn, right? There's a thing in a court case. There's no true legal definition of what porn is. You just know it when you see it, right? I don't need somebody to explain to me and break that. I know it when I see it. And that's how roughing the passer is. That's how it should be. You know when a guy is driving a quarterback into the turf. You know when a guy could have took his foot off the gas. And you know it when you see it. And if you take that approach, you're not always going to be right, which is part of the problem with officiating is we're pursuing perception. But you're going to be right more than you're wrong. And that's got to be the goal. Perfection can't be the goal. Don't let the pursuit of perfection get in the way of being better. And the officials need to be better. The officials are impacting games. The best we should never talk about them. And we do. And part of it's the league's fault. Part of it's our fault as fans. Pushing stuff like replay, right? Where it's here's the thing with the replay, right? So this new replay rule about you can review a no call on pass interference. I'm going to say, and this is just my opinion, you can like it or not, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. As a concept, what you're doing, from my perspective, and Mike, feel free to jump in, right? But I'm going to give you my thoughts. You're asking, and take them out of it, right? You're taking someone who does a job, and you're saying to them, hey, I think you just did your job poorly. I think you're wrong. I think you just made a really bad mistake at your job. This person believes themselves to be an expert at their job. And more importantly, they believe they know how to do their job better than you know how to do their job. So you, someone who they don't believe is qualified to do their job, someone they don't believe was in a position physically, not the role, physically on the field to do their job, walks up to them and says, hey, I think you just failed horribly at your job. So what I want you to do is I want you to go look at a replay and call your boss in New York. And I want you and your boss to consider that you did your job horribly. And I want your boss to publicly tell the world you did your job horribly and overrule you. And I want you to come back out and basically get on the mic and say, I did my job really horribly. I'm sorry. That's what I want. So that's the concept of this missed pass interference call. So I heard a number and I didn't verify it. So 20 of these have been called and 5 have been overturned, maybe 6, some number like that. Here's the reality with that penalty. This is just my opinion. It's very, very simple. It is going to have to be obvious and blatant and horrible, right? Because there was a play in the Lions game, the really bad decision by Stafford, where he chucked the ball over the middle. I thought it was pass interference, not face guarding. My initial thought was face guarding, but face guarding really isn't a rule, apparently. You don't have to look back for the ball. I've always thought if you don't look back for the ball, that's called face guarding, and I thought it was, 5 yards, automatic first down, something like that. So apparently that's not the case. You don't have to look back for the ball. But what has always been true in football since I started watching in the mid-'70s is you can't put your hands on the receiver when the ball's in the air and he's trying to make a catch. And that happened. But here's the thing. That is so subjective. That is so subjective. And this penalty, this challenge where you're going to tell the ref he did a crappy job right to his face, go back and look, and then come back out and admit you did a crappy job. If it is not blatant, if it is not obvious, he's going to tell you to kick rocks. They're not going to overturn these calls. They're just not. The more we get, the more the statistical sample size get bigger, the percentage is going to go down. They're not going to overturn these pass interference calls or non-pass interference calls. I don't know why we expect they would. This is a simple human behavioral study. This is not about anything except screw you. Don't come and tell me I did my job horribly and then expect me to go and get chastised by my boss and come back out here and apologize to you and say I did it horribly. It's going to have to be blatant. So the message becomes simple to me. Don't challenge this unless it is obvious. If it's subjective at all, don't waste the challenge because they're not going to do it. And it's much more a practical matter of human behavior versus anything related to football. I think you're wasting your time to ask these guys to go critique themselves and come back and admit they're wrong on anything that's even remotely subjective. If there's any subjectivity to the call, you're not getting it. And the numbers are going to bear this out. And they're going to alter this rule or probably just eliminate it because it's going to be a waste. You're wasting timeouts. First of all, they don't miss egregious pass interference calls that often. So my biggest point is there's not going to be a lot of these that are so obvious that they missed it that they're going to want to overturn it. The numbers are going to prove out that they're going to get challenges to somewhat subjective calls, and they're just not going to do it. I'm not even saying I blame them. I'm in fact saying if I'm them, I'll probably do the same thing. If it's not obvious and blatant, which they don't tend to miss obvious and blatant, not with pass interference, because pass interference is pretty clear, even offense. And the Eagles had like 3 offensive calls. But that rule is even more simple. If you extend your arm, you push me, if you don't learn how to push off well, it's your fault. You're getting a call. If you fully extend your arm, put your arm into my body and fully extend your arm, whether it truly impacts the play, your ability to make the catch, or any of that, don't fully extend your arm. They have to call that. You can't miss a guy putting his hand on another guy and fully extending his arm. You might have no real impact on the defender. He may never have been able to stop you from making a catch. None of that matters. If you fully extend your arm, they're going to call offensive pass interference. And the same thing. If your guy upstairs reviewing and you're a coach, he needs to say, it is blatant that they missed this. It is like a 95% certainty that this is pass interference and it's clear that they missed it. Okay, we'll issue the challenge. If you're not in the 90th percentile, don't challenge it. Because the refs are not going to overturn themselves. Their bosses are not going to overturn them. They're not going to stand there on national TV and come out and say, I suck. After reviewing the play, I suck. They're not going to do it. If it's subjective, you're going to get the ruling on the field stands. The call on the field has been confirmed. Don't ask them to do that because they're not inclined to do it. I don't think I would be either. So you're wasting challenges. You're wasting timeouts. You're wasting your time challenging these pass interference penalties because they're just not going to overturn them. They're not. So they called a hit on a defenseless player against Jarrad Davis. And I got to be honest, I consider myself a really knowledgeable fan. I need somebody. Hit me up on Twitter. You can email us. Tell me what that means, a defenseless player. I am a defender. This guy's about to catch a pass. I want to knock him out of bounds so that the pass is incomplete. I want to dislodge the football. I want to hit him so 2 plays from now, he doesn't think about coming across the middle. What is Jarrad Davis supposed to do? He didn't hit him with the crown of his helmet. He hit him with his shoulder. That's literally his job. What is he supposed to do on that play? This is the officiating is driving me crazy, right? They called a pick play. They ran it was, if you were doing a documentary on how to run a pick play, you could have used that play that the Eagles used. And they said some nonsense about a yard down the field. So you're telling me you can run a pick play as long as the guy he ran directly into the Lions defender and blocked him. It was textbook definition of a pick play. If that happens a yard down the field, it's a penalty. But if he does it within a yard of the line of scrimmage, it's what? Just a block? Okay. I'm not even saying I know what's right or what's wrong. I know this. That is ridiculously inconsistent, right? If he can do it at the line of scrimmage or within a yard of the line of scrimmage, then he should be able to do it 5 yards down the field. If he can't do it 2 yards down the field, he shouldn't be able to do it at the line of scrimmage. That's the kind of nonsense. Now that's probably more rule book because I believe they called it the way it's written. That's competition committee, figure that out because that's idiotic. But this kind of inconsistent stuff within the game, whether it's a rule that's stupid and it puts the refs in a position to have to call a stupid rule, whether it's a rule like the reviewing the pass interference that puts the refs in a position to not be human beings who don't like being challenged or told they're wrong, or whether it is the subjectiveness of Trey Flowers falling into Carson Wentz and getting a roughing the passer call, or just, I don't know, where they're stationed on the field and like 8 dudes missed the worst face mask penalty in the history of football. There is so much work to do with the refs. And the high level opinion about that is this. The owners need to take accountability for the performance of the refs. That's it. Once they do that, and they say to themselves, the refs are impacting the product. The refs are impacting the product. You would have thought the New Orleans thing last year would have done it. I think this rule is, I want to say bad. It is not correct yet. They might be able to tweak it. But this new rule is just asking the refs to get on the mic and say, I sucked. I'm really bad. And they're not going to do that. Nobody's going to do that unless it's obvious. So it's kind of a waste of time. And the sooner that Matt Patricia and the rest of the coaches realize that's a waste of time rule, unless it is blatant. The New Orleans thing was blatant. So they created a rule that basically accommodates blatant miscalls. Don't waste this challenge on subjective stuff. You're never going to get it. It is clear to me after 3 weeks, you're never going to get anything subjective. So if it is not New Orleans Rams level blatant, don't even challenge it because you're wasting everybody's time. They're not going to give it to you. They're not even being coy about it. They're being, and the more stats we get, it's going to prove itself out. So I think that the refs are my biggest, here's a guy. Now I spent the bulk of this segment talking about them. I need to give some guys credit. So wait, one more bad thing. Eagles receivers dropped 7 passes. That's important to mention. I'm not so cornbread Kool-Aid that I don't understand that they dropped 2 touchdown passes. Goddard, I don't even know how the pass could have been better, right? Now I think Hawkinson dropped the touchdown for us. It happens. I'm going to struggle to get really, really deep on drop passes. They just happen. There's reasons, right? But the Eagles dropped 7 passes. That was game impacting. It just was. So as a guy, the Eagles now, and you go back to no Deshaun Jackson, no Alshon Jeffrey, their top 2 receivers are out. So these are backups, young guys, talented, good, probably will get better, but they dropped 7 passes, and that's important. I think that here's a guy, Agnew, I gotta give a guy credit. I bashed him and he bounced back. His punt return was good. The kickoff return was game impacting. Agnew's a guy. Marvin was a beast. Marvin makes catches. Marvin makes tough catches. And he had 6 for 101 and a touchdown. Marvin Jones Jr. impacted the game. He was a guy today, for real. And ultimately, I'm going to give honorable mention to A'Shawn Robinson and Trey Flowers. I thought they impacted the game. I thought they were a presence throughout the game, not just sporadically here or there or see. They were a presence, both of them. Snacks played well. The defensive front as a whole could be a guy today. But I liked hearing Trey Flowers' name get called a lot. That makes me feel better. And I just like A'Shawn Robinson. I think he plays all over the line, and I just like that guy. So in terms of like, here's a guy, mostly refs, but there were guys who actually didn't drive me crazy today who weren't wearing Foot Locker jerseys. So now we're going to move on to the time in the podcast where Mike gets to drill me. Sometimes he mocks me. Maybe he'll challenge me, but we're going to get 3 questions in. And I always use the analogy that this segment will sometimes feel like 2 Darrell Bevel dive plays into the middle of the line and an incomplete pass and a punt, which is why we decided to name this segment 3 and Out.
All right, 3 and Out. So, how do you feel about the apparent special teams improvement this week?
You know, it's a good question, and I thought you might go in that direction. The key word for me there is apparent, right? Because after 2 data points of Arizona and San Diego, I had established sort of a baseline of where I felt they were as a special teams unit, right? And as you know, we work with data. We work with baseline, and then how do you perform to the baseline? But the baseline can move, right? We called out the special teams coordinator last week specifically, and I said they need to make changes. You said, what do they need to do? What do they need to do? And I talked about blocking schemes. I talked about maybe a new return man, right? So the key word is apparent. To the naked eye, it looks like there have been things that were done. Both, so the block field goal is the, standout item that you have to still question. Now, I honestly believe I only saw 2 replays. I'm not talking about that much. I'm separating it. I really believe this is not a Lions fan viewpoint or I don't want to bash them, because I bashed them pretty good last week about special teams. I think Malcolm Jenkins made a great play on the block field goal. I just do. It was not a leap, which I think might be legal in the NFL anyway, but it was a good move to get by his guy and make a play. Now, I don't have the all 22, the coach's film with the high level to see if the guy who had responsibility for him did not do his job, if he set up wrong, if he shifted the wrong way, or just whiffed. Any of those things could have happened. My view from 2 replays, I feel like Malcolm Jenkins made a great play. So set aside the block field goal. I think I need more data, right? I need to see this is real. Now, if they come back against Kansas City and have a solid game in that aspect, because you really want them to play well in all 3 phases. That phase was the one that was most concerning to me until today. So if we see more of that, which is, for me, you're not going to get kick returns for touchdowns. You're not going to get that many kick returns, right? They've done everything they can to take that out of the game. So he's just not going to get opportunities to return kicks for touchdowns. But when he does, I don't know what the number needs to be, right? I'm going to randomly go with 25 yards return. I need punt returns to be more effective. He had one today and it was really good because they can flip the field. Within the game, there's a lot of flip the field, right? Bury your punt within the 5 or 10 yard line. Now your game plan, your playbook condenses and you want to get a first down to get breathing room and you want to do these things. And the other team's goal is the other way. When you're in or around midfield, maybe on their side, and you make the decision on 4th down that I'm going to punt, you have a very specific goal in mind. Bury them inside to 10, get a 3 and out, and we get the ball back in or around midfield, right? So it is a chess move in that you're thinking 3 moves ahead. You're thinking way up to, we get the ball back because they punt out of their end zone after our defense does their job. Because you should be able to do that, because inside their 5, their playbook is limited. They can't run everything. So you scheme defensively for a backed up offense. And all you have to do is not let some guy get away. Quarterback doesn't have a lot of time because he's dropping back into the end zone. He doesn't want to get a sack for a safety. He doesn't want one of his offensive linemen to get a holding penalty, which is also a safety. He doesn't want to pull an Orlovsky and run out of the back of the end zone. Side note, the Lions had a quarterback named Dan Orlovsky. I'm going to say 8-10 years ago. Just completely lost where he was on the field. Dropped back and ran right out of the back of the end zone. It's still funny. I mean, and as funny as it can be because it was utterly ridiculous. So that's called pulling an Orlovsky. So all those things are challenges for a team backed up to the goal line. So defensively, you can try some things, but what you really want is probably some man coverage because you don't have to cover as long because the quarterback's going to get rid of the ball fast. And without going like totally deep into the weeds and getting nerdy about that, the return of punts can flip the field easily. Because if that punter out of the end zone just gets off a rocket and you end up dropping back as a return man and catching that ball, you're 30. If it's a rocket, it probably is more of a line drive, which means the coverage team isn't down there as fast, and you should be able to have running room. Those are the kinds of subtle little things that can matter in special teams, because those can be points. Those will be points. If you take that kick at your 40 and return to 20 yards, you're in their field position. You're almost in field goal range with Prater, right? Those things are incredibly simple and shifted the other way. They punt. Whether you call the fair catch at the 8 or the 10 or you choose not to, and they get a bounce and you're down at the 2, that's a big deal. You can call plays at the 10 that you can't call at the 2. These are subtle little special teams things that I need to see more of. I want to see it consistently. I don't expect him to bring back another kick for a touchdown this year. If he does, it's statistically improbable, and I will applaud him for it. Mostly because the league's taken that out of the game. You don't get a lot of kicks you can return, and that's a really hard thing to do. We can't get field goals blocked. That's ridiculous. And as much as I just gave Malcolm Jenkins full credit for it, you got to clean that up. Whatever it is, you got to clean it up. I think the most impactful area you can see is punt returns. Punt returns is really what this is about. I'm not worried about Prater. I'll never worry about Prater. That Muehlbach, Sam Martin, Matt Prater combination, if you put any value on that, probably one of the best in the league, right? Don Muehlbach's been doing this forever. Prater's solid. So the impact on special teams to me is you have to defend punt returns. You can't have guys taking them back on you. But at the same time, I would like Jamal Agnew to average somewhere between 23 and 27 yards a return. If he gets up there, then he's having an impact on the game. Which is the whole point, right? You want him to have an impact on the game. So, from there, that's really all you're looking for.
And how about the running game? What's the problem there with the run for this team?
So with the running game, it's a tough question, right? Because there's obviously components. And I don't have exposure to exactly what the scheme is. And in fact, I have questions. I've talked about this on all 3 podcasts. I use the word scheme all the time. I don't understand what they're trying to accomplish with the running game. There are times that I am 100% certain that the running game, the sole purpose of the running game in the mind of Darrell Bevell is decoy, set up play action later in the game, the term that I hate, keep them honest. But when he was hired, the whole narrative was Darrell Bevell likes to run the ball. They're going to be in the top 15 in rushing. Is it the scheme? Because the plays that I see as they're called, they don't look to be designed to break stuff. The reverse was half the rushing yards yesterday. Now that counts in rushing stats. Probably shouldn't, but it does. But I think you're a very talented back in Kerryon Johnson. But today he was having to do some Barry stuff where you have to elude a guy almost before you get the football, right? 2 yards in the backfield, guys are talking to you, and you've got to make moves. And he did a great job today of turning some 4-yard losses into 1-yard gains. That's not effective. That's not going to help you win football games. I applaud Kerryon Johnson for getting it done, but so when I say scheme, it is the types of running plays you call and when you call them. I'm certain that's part of the problem. Is the offensive line. And I'm struggling because I want to like these guys who give up 0 sacks in back-to-back games. But you had 86 yards rushing, and like I said, about half of it was on one reverse. You ran 27 running plays that netted somewhere between 40 and 50 yards on the ground. That is pathetic is probably the word. And I don't know that the Eagles have the greatest run defense in the league. I don't know where it doesn't matter against anybody. Against the best run defense in the league, you've got to generate something. I guess my point there, so your question is, what do I think is the problem? I think there is not one problem. I think there are multiple problems. And I think Bevell has to figure it out. That's his job. I think if I just did it as a fan, again, I always have to preface that because I'm just a guy who watches and listens and is immersed in this football team. It's a combination of things. I think when you run versus when you don't, right? You have to, if you're running a lot on 3rd and short, you're running plays like 3rd and 2. You're running a play designed to get 3 or 4 yards, not a play designed to go 80, right? I don't know if the playbook consists of plays designed to go 80. I think the playbook is filled with running plays designed to get 4 to 7. because I think there's a degree of when you run and how you run is about controlling the clock. It might be about resting your defense. You could be trying to kill time at the end of a game or end of a half. It may be the way you run. I do believe that's part of it. I don't think their offensive line is healthy or the best run blockers because their number one job is protect number 9, and they're doing that. So I'm not bashing them. I don't know if you can build this offensive line that does everything well. I don't know. I think they pass protect well, in addition to Stafford doing a lot of things as well. I don't know if it's a good run blocking offensive line. And they're 2-0-1, so can I really complain about it if they're doing enough? Now, eventually, we're going to have to do a podcast where it wasn't enough because they're not going to go 15-0-1, right? One of these weeks, probably next week, it's not going to be enough. And I'm going to be talking about what's the problem in the running game with the passion of a loss versus 86 yards, half of which was on one play, coming in a win. So it's tough. It's tough. I personally am not a fan, as I've mentioned many times, of a lot of these straight dive plays into the middle of the line. I don't like the concept of keeping them honest. I don't like any of that. But that's me. That's me. And I think that, again, to answer your question, I think it's multiple things. I think the scheme is not designed to bust big plays. If you do, great. I don't think that's the design. 2, I don't think the offensive line is very good at run blocking. And I think 3, make no mistake, no matter what other people will say or what they're going to tell you, as long as number 9 is your quarterback, you're a passing team. Despite rushing the ball 27 times, still a passing team. So I don't know that the running game will ever be great. I don't know if that's the goal. I think the goal is be balanced enough, get us the short yards when we need it, keep the other team honest enough that they have to have a meeting during the week to prepare for carry on. But ultimately, it is to support the passing game. In whatever way you want to put it, the function of the running game here will be to support. For balance sake, right? You can't pass every play, so you have to have them. Again, short yardage. If you're 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, you don't want to pass. I think you may need a 4-minute offense where you're killing the clock and you want to run the ball effectively and get a couple first downs. Those are the functions of the running game. I don't think, I don't, the way it seems after 3 weeks, I don't think Darrell Bevel utilizes, he may want to, I shouldn't say, no, I don't think there's any evidence that he does, wants the running game to be the feature, wants the running game to be the focus. The passing game is a focus. The run game has a role in that. So yeah, that's my really short answer. It is that it is the run game is designed to really just support the pass game. So not a great offensive line and a scheme that's designed for the run game to be a support mechanism for the pass. That would be my shorter answer.
All right, so hit me with it, Demetrius. You know I show up to this thing every week just for the cornbread. So where are we at in the cornbread process? The cornbread process. So quickly, for those who may have never listened to the podcast, I'll explain again that the cornbread is the metaphor for fans much like me who love their team and often don't have the ability to be objective about what's going on with their team, right? And you can use other terms. We're myopic, we're naive. There are people that will call someone like me a lemming. I don't really care about that. I think I have the ability to be objective. And there are people on the other end of that spectrum. That guy that just always wants to be negative and he always wants everybody fired. There's a place for that guy. It's just not here. For me, the cornbread process will take a giant leap a week from today. If they beat the Chiefs, if they win that game, I'm not sure they have to win. They may just have to be competitive, right? If they win that game and they're sitting at 3-0-1 and they get a bye week, that Green Bay game, especially if the Packers come in unbeaten too, that Green Bay game is going to be piping hot cornbread, butter everywhere, a jar of Honolulu Blue Kool-Aid on the side, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
right? So the cornbread mix is certainly in the bowl, right? And I'm stirring it. The oven's preheating. I got the pan all greased up. It's ready, right? It's the cornbread process is right there. But there's a degree of that kind of always with the Lions. That's literally what cornbread means. I want so bad to put this pan in the oven and smell it in about 16 minutes, right? And take it out nice and brown and just cut that first piece. The cornbread process is underway. I mean, despite everything that I see and what I've talked about the last 2 weeks, which is these have been some ugly wins that I'm not sure they deserve, but cornbread doesn't care. The cornbread process doesn't have the luxury of worrying about, Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey didn't play. The cornbread process doesn't care about the guys the Chargers were missing last week. The cornbread process does not care. So it's going well, right? It is. I try and be objective. I feel like I've been objective for the last hour and a half or whatever we're doing, but the cornbread process is underway. It's mixing in the bowl. I'm about ready to pour this in the pan. And I mean, just truthfully, any objective fan, right? If they go 3-0-1 and they beat the Chiefs, they went on the road and beat Philly, even a depleted Philly team, that's a good win today. That's a good win. So you go on the road and beat Philly and then come home and beat the Chiefs. You're 3-0-1. There's going to be stories, right? They're going to get some attention. But you multiply that to get to cornbread, right? 3-0-1 team after 4 weeks when a lot of people thought they'd be 1-3. Our preseason, I might have had them at 2-2. But it is about, right, exceeding the expectations. And cornbread is really about expectations. That's the main function of the cornbread process is we didn't think they were going to be this and they're better than this. So then you put the cornbread on top and elevate it even more. So the cornbread process is going very well. But it takes a huge step a week from today. It takes a huge step. And by the same token, if they get smoked, right? Literally an embarrassing kind of thing, which they have done. Then you turn the oven off and you pour this mix down the garbage disposal and move on. Go get some carrots or something. I don't know. So it's at a really dicey point that they could turn this season into something that potentially could be special, that garners attention and interest and buzz, and they can do all that a week from today. So yeah, we do. The cornbread process is doing just fine. So as for what's next, we've talked about it quite a bit. I just told you this is a cornbread game right here. So the Chiefs are coming in 3-0. I don't know if they say they struggled because I didn't see it all. They beat the Ravens today, 33-28. Where my homies went 27-37, 374 and 3 touchdowns, 132 quarterback rating. Scary numbers. He's a video game, right? He's a video game. They did rush for 140 today. I think it was kind of a split thing between Shady and Damian Williams. And Shady's hurt. We don't know LaShawn McCoy. If you don't know who Shady is, we don't know what his condition will be. We'll have to wait and see. Now, if Shady doesn't play, as much as it'll hurt, like I said, my fantasy football team, it probably won't hurt the Lions. And Damian Williams is a good player. So I think, obviously, though, Patrick Mahomes is one of my homies, in case you didn't know that. Look it up. Patrick Mahomes is the first, second, and third focus, right? He can make you look really bad. He can do things that a lot of guys can't do right now. And a lot of that credit goes to Andy Reid. I think his offensive schemes, his offensive innovations, guys are copying. And interesting stat, people talk about the Belichick tree, and they showed a stat during the game. Andy Reid's tree's got like 8 guys on it. 7 or 8 guys. I think Belichick's has 4. Maybe it was 6-4. But Andy Reid's coaching tree, like assistants who have worked for Andy Reid that are now head coaches in the NFL versus the same group of guys for Bill Belichick, they're impressive guys. And I almost feel like Andy Reid's underrated. His offense, the things he does with the offense are just amazing. Goes back to Donovan McNabb, and he's done it with, he did it with Alex Smith. He can do some things. And Patrick Mahomes is special. So home with the Chiefs next Sunday, big deal, cornbread game. We need them to I don't know what it's going to be. I'm all over. It's too early. I can't start talking about next week yet. I hope they play well, win or lose. But either way, we're going to certainly be back to talk about it. So I want to thank you for listening to the podcast today. Again, Lions got a 27-24 win in Philly against the Eagles. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank Mike Ward, as always. Look for our podcast on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, that's the easiest way to get it. You'll get a notification every time we get a new pod posted, the Roar Podcast. You can also find us on Twitter, @CityRoar. Feel free to give me some comments, some thoughts. Hit us on our Facebook page, our email. We got a number of ways to hit us now. Appreciate everybody listening. We're starting to pick up a little steam, and we're incredibly thankful and grateful for those of you who are listening. You spread the word, anything. We appreciate it. We enjoy doing it, and we hope you enjoy listening to it. So, as always, our musical contribution, I want to make sure I give credit where it's due. Special thanks to Verified Picasso, Otis McDonald, Wayne Jones, Density and Time, The Grand Affair, Young Logos, spelled Y-U-N-G, Diamond Ortiz, and MK2. So appreciate you listening. Hope to talk to you next week. Thanks.